Boa tarde. Bem-vindos ao webinar sobre o mercado da Irlanda. O meu nome é Joana Afonso e sou gestora de projetos na aceleradora do Instituto Pedro Nunes. Estamos a organizar esta sessão uma vez que a internacionalização é um passo crucial e estratégico para o desenvolvimento das empresas de base tecnológica e também para a economia nacional. O Instituto Pedro Nunes está a dinamizar o projeto Pro Global, um programa de aceleração para a internacionalização, que pretende acelerar a internacionalização de empresas de base tecnológica e empresas inovadoras, nomeadamente através do apoio da sua estratégia de internacionalização, permitindo o alargamento de redes de contactos e a identificação de oportunidades de negócio nos diferentes mercados externos. Ao abrigo deste projeto, que é financiado pelo PRR, o Plano de Recuperação e Resiliência Português, o IPN está então a dinamizar uma série de webinars dedicados a diferentes mercados externos. Hoje dedicamos esta sessão ao mercado irlandês e vamos conhecer um pouco mais sobre este mercado, como se realizam negócios e que iniciativas, projetos e outros incentivos estão disponíveis para que as startups possam conhecer. E vamos ter também o testemunho e a experiência de um empresário irlandês. A sessão de hoje será conduzida por Luís Reis, representante local da ICEP na Irlanda, e por Paul Hennessy, fundador e CEO da Decorify. No final de cada intervenção teremos um momento para perguntas e respostas, pelo que eu convido desde já todos os participantes a utilizar o canal dos comentários para colocarem as vossas questões. Portanto, sem mais demoras, vou passar a palavra a Luís Reis, representante local da ICEP na Irlanda. Luís, a palavra é sua.
Muito boa tarde a todos. Agradeço todo o interesse que tiveram e que tenham por este mercado, que é um mercado europeu, que facilita a sua abordagem, mas que tem as suas especificidades. Because our guest doesn't understand English, I will do my presentation in English, but any question, any doubts that you may have, I'll be open to explain in Portuguese or in English if necessary. So, about Ireland. As you probably know, Ireland it's a recent, compared with Portugal, of course, is very recent in terms of as a country independent, because it's just around 100 years old, and in terms of size, it's a little smaller than Portugal, and it's more or less half of the population. Nevertheless, the history of Ireland, it's more or less well known, but they have some interesting facts that I just put in here on the slide. Some funny things like in Ireland they don't have snakes, or the Wild Atlantic Way is the longest coastal driving route on Earth. But apart from all the touristic and more funny things like Halloween being originated in Ireland, the history of Ireland, it's marked by the Irish famine that happened in the 19th century, and create a massive diaspora all over the world. And the Irish nowadays, they are present. There's a diaspora even bigger than the Portuguese we speak normally about but the Irish one is much bigger. So moving forward, what you find in Ireland is the one, in terms of economic performance, that is what brings us here today. It's the recent years are amazing. But if you go back 30 years, they start over there, and the main reason why Ireland has this economic performance, and I just ranking this World Competitiveness Index, but anyway, in many other rankings, Ireland is the first one or the second one, or at least is on the top 5 in the world in terms of economic performance, in terms of government efficiency, business also. They are very business oriented, as we will see and later on in some of my slides, and even from Paul. And in terms of infrastructure, they don't perform so well as Portugal in some areas, but they're still quite good because it's Europe, of course. And to go back just a little, the last 4 years, what happened in Ireland is, although the COVID impact all the world, in terms of Ireland, it was something different, because Ireland was the only country in the European Union to grow during the COVID pandemic. 2 years that were stronger, that 2020 to 2021. And nevertheless, the economy, the internal market was shut down. The construction was in lockdowns. That they were not able to travel abroad. All the hospitality sector was on lockdown, were closed, and many other sectors. Only the sectors that were related to the final consumer, to the things that were more essential, like food, drinks, and others related products, were open. And in the end, what happened is that Ireland can grow on the 2020 year, and also on 2021 and 2022, with two figures growth, so more than 10% every year. And this is based on the international market, because Ireland is and the business in Ireland are almost fully oriented to the international market. It's an approach that they've been developing for many years from now. Is based on attracting foreign direct investment in particular and specific areas, like the medical devices and the pharmaceutical and the IT, of course. And this created economic unique country in the world. In the world, it was the fast growing, but even in the European Union, the only one that had a growth in these years of the COVID pandemic. And what they forecast, of course, last year they went down a little, but nevertheless, this year they will grow again 1.2%, and the forecast for the next year will be getting back to 3.6%. They also are reducing the inflation, but all of this growth that we have been seeing for the last 30 years is, as I explained, based on the exports on the international market. And the most interesting thing in this Irish economy is that they always have a surplus in the trade of goods, and not always on the service. Although in Portugal, most of the people they look at Ireland as a service country, and it is, of course. They have a surplus in the trade of goods that is more than 60,000 million euros every month. So it's unbelievable, and this is based on the products they are specialized, mainly all related with biopharma and medical technology, but also other areas. But this explains why, even they were closed in the internal market, they continue to grow in terms of economic development, because the main sectors of the economy were not affected by COVID, and they produce not for 5 millions, but for thousands and thousands of millions of people. They see the market as an international market. And just to give you a small idea, in Ireland you can find 9 of the top 10 technology companies in the world, 8 of the top 10 industrial automation companies, all of top 10 pharmaceutical companies, the top 5 software companies, 14 of the 15 medical technology companies, 8 of the top financial service companies. And as I was saying before, in terms of goods, and I'm talking about medical devices and pharmaceuticals, they actually have the factories here. So not one. So if you look at big companies like Medtronic, they have 3 factories in Ireland. They have the major facility of Intel outside the United States. It's in Ireland. And I could go on, stay here all day talking about these big companies that actually produce in Ireland, not only trade, but they produce. And this give Ireland, in terms of international trade, a very competitiveness economy. So, what do you consider when you approach in the Irish market? Okay, so Paul will go further deeper on this, but what to look up to when you coming for this market? As also in Portugal, not yet as strong as here, the IT sector is it's facing new challenges, but nevertheless, when you approach this market, uh, they are very business oriented, and whatever you do, whatever you deliver, you must bring value. And if you don't bring value to, they don't waste time listen to you, trying to understand what product or service you have to offer to this market. It's, as I explained, this is cultural, business oriented market, and you must be aware that they will not waste their time if you don't have a product or a service that don't bring value to them. So synthesizing all this information. So the Irish work very well offshore and in the near shore also. The big techs, as I will explain, the big companies, multinationals, they control a big part of the market. The Irish universities are good and well known and very well in the international rankings. And of course, the men, although they teach the Irish in the previous years in the university. All the courses are in English, of course, so this brings also a big advantage. And nevertheless, it's a market of opportunities, and what you see, what you can offer apart from your product and services, that in Ireland there's no talent enough for the demand. So it's easy to find like 20% or more of the people working these companies coming from abroad, mainly from European countries, but all over the world. So they really need partners, suppliers, and talent to keep this economy growing. So apart from this business model, they have, of course, government programs that drive the investment to this country, and Paul will detail this later on. But in the end of the day, we can summarize that the relationship are the main key importance to do business in this country. And to finish my short presentation about living standards, working market, and lifestyle. Ireland, when you approach this market for living or to expect people to work here or to deliver some products or service, you must expect that housing is expensive. There's a shortage of offer that will increase the price. Overall, the cost of living, of course, is much higher than in Portugal, and in terms of safety, they rank similar levels as Portugal, and of course they have some areas that are not so safe. But in general, it's a very safe country. And for international expats, sometimes the school can be a challenge. But anyway, I don't find any problem for any, if I speak with Portuguese or if other expats, they struggle, but then in the end it's always possible to get house, to get the school for the kids, and wherever is necessary in your life. In terms of markets, working market, they when we talk about the multinationals, of course, they have a very government tax oriented policy, not only for corporate but also for the entry levels workers. They have like a flat tax rate. If you earn up to 38,000, around that a year, you just pay 20% of personal income tax. So it's more clean. and easy to understand how the system work if you compare with Portugal. As I was explaining earlier, around 20% of the workers in these international companies that service or pharmaceuticals or medical devices or wherever, around 20% are from outside Ireland, and they are very important in the keeping this level of growth. Nevertheless, and I reinforce again, relationship is key. And if you if you travel to Ireland and you visit, you will see that the network that you have is your best business card. The people that you get to know, and these are the ones that will open doors to other and put you in touch with the right persons. And this is the key that you have to develop when you approach this market. In terms of lifestyles, to finish my presentation, of course the is cooler than Portugal, and the water also, but it's beautiful if you go for the countryside. I think it's for me the big advantage in terms of beauty, landscape, and it's the sea and the green. It's very beautiful, very nice, and it's very small village. And there's no shortage of pubs, of course, because it's part of the Irish lifestyle. And when you compare with the south countries like Portugal, Spain, of course, the opening times are always different. And but in the end, you will see when you travel here that is a very family oriented country, and they incentivize this kind of family style and time. The companies to allow you to have time for the family. So this is a very interesting fact to consider when you approach this market. So I will finish my presentation. I'm open to questions after the whole presentation, and I'll be glad to help if you decide to come to this market. You have my contacts here, my email, but I suppose that all the contacts will be shared by the Instituto Pedro Nunes. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Luis, for your presentation and the introduction. My name is Paul Hennessy. I'm a co-founder of AI interior design platform Decorify. I'm currently living over in Portugal. My wife is Portuguese. I've kind of been here on and off for a few years. I'm from Dublin originally, and I just really wanted to be a part of this, just to kind of give you, I guess, some of my feedback and, you know, what Ireland can be good for in terms of helping your companies grow. So I guess just to kind of get into it a little bit more. So my background is I used to be a pilot, and I went into business in my mid-20s after just needing a bit of a change and realizing aviation just wasn't for me. I slowly transitioned into software. So even though right now I'm an engineer for quite a number of years, I was programming since quite a young age and stuff like that. But I guess the point of this is I founded Outbound, a sales intelligence startup, which actually led me to come over to Portugal, where we got some pre-seed venture capital, and I set up an office here in Aveiro. And kind of since then, I've been kind of back and forth effectively between Ireland and Portugal. So I've a good bit of experience in between the two countries, and you know how business is done and so forth. So to kind of, I guess, get a bit more into it, I guess some cultural differences I noticed when I first came to Portugal. So even though, for example, salaries are significantly lower, I guess, than Northern Europe, not even just Ireland, the taxes are a lot higher as well. So there's a lot of offsets to it that. The cost of living definitely is lower. But one thing I really loved about Portugal is actually it's to focus on work-life balance. So people here, for example, really, you know, take time to enjoy the beach, take time to enjoy each other's company. They're really all about like just enjoying life a bit more as a whole, which can obviously have its negative consequences when you compare it to other countries in terms of, you know, building a really good sustainable business. In terms of, I guess, the contracts and how we regulate employment, hiring and such, they're often quite strict here. You know, it's quite difficult at times to, you know, let go of an employee who isn't really performing in whatever way you think that is. And with that as well, in terms of bureaucracy, it is a little bit of a challenge in Portugal, but I really do think Portugal is actually addressing a lot of that going forward. There's still a lot to change, but things are going. And of course, the education side in Portugal, the universities are pretty good. You're starting to get a lot of people who are actually going to third level education, which is a really good impact for Portugal going forward. I guess some of the pros and cons of Ireland, really, the salaries are quite high, so it's great if you're an employee, and the taxes are relatively low for what you get. But living in Ireland can be quite expensive. So, for example, the cost of living just to rent, in Dublin, can be between 1,500 to 3,000 a month, even for a relatively small apartment. So that's definitely quite expensive. The work culture is, as I said, quite different. It's very, very fast paced. So it's really all about results. What kind of value do you give your organization or company? That's pretty much what they really want to see. And actually, in terms of hiring and firing people, it's quite easy. So if somebody doesn't meet expectations, for the most part, it's an easy enough process to kind of let them go. So generally, things are pretty easy to do. So if you need to actually, solve a particular problem, if you need to deal with the government, if you need to set up a new office or anything like that, processes are pretty straightforward, and everything usually, for the most part, there's a simple path to do it. If you ask a question, you usually get an answer. It could be, a process which has numerous steps, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. And in terms of the workforce itself, it's pretty educated, and it's quite good. But as Lewis mentioned as well, we don't have enough people in Ireland really to facilitate a lot of the employment roles. So in terms of, I guess, coming from Portugal to Ireland, if you are actually coming over to set up a company, or if you're going to set up another branch of the Portuguese entity, really, you'll obviously, the main reason why I'm saying this predominantly is if you're going to access any state funding or grants or such, in relation. To set up a company is extremely easy. It can all be done online. It takes probably about 2 weeks if you don't use an agency, but it's super easy, and I think it's €50. It's very, very cheap. I just set up a new company last week for a new AI company we're setting. Minimal requirements, so it's pretty easy. All the documentation is just very, very simple. It's EU friendly. Anybody in the EU can do it. And unlike some elements of Portugal, there's no minimum share capital required for the type of company you're setting up, for the most part. In terms of actually like compliance and everything like that, there's not really much bureaucracy or obligations for actually having one of these companies. So for a typical limited company, you don't need any accountant if any of your revenue, or if your revenue is below 500K, you don't need an accountancy to do VAT returns. You can claim VAT straight away back. So especially with a lot of R&D companies, when you're actually, doing your R&D on your company, you're going to have a lot of, tax write-offs and things even before you make any profit. You're able to claim and reimburse VAT directly from that, which, as far as I know, is a little bit different in Portugal. And in terms of annual returns and everything like that, once a year kind of B1 annual returns, extremely easy to fit in. You don't need an accountant for any of this. Obviously, I definitely recommend it, but just to kind of get started and get your foot in the door if required, really easy. So in terms of some state aids and grants, probably the best start would be Enterprise Ireland. That's our kind of national fund and development agency, which is really, I guess, for kind of smaller internal focused companies. So they have a startup loan program. So you're able to go as a Portuguese company and kind of get on this, which would be able to bring your team over, get them set up and get investment. Then as well on top, they have an innovation voucher. So if you're doing like R&D or kind of large scale tax funding or grants required funding, they'll kind of help you contribute to that. And then they have HPSU, which is high potential startup. In my previous company as well, we qualified for that too. We're able to get match funding with private investors. So you can go to some of the kind of bigger venture capital firms. They can be in Ireland, they can be abroad. It doesn't matter, and they'll kind of join you on a match venture round. Then you can actually focus on entrepreneur and accelerator programs. So this is a program I actually done before myself, which is New Frontiers. New Frontiers is actually a program focused very much on the entrepreneur rather than the actual company itself. And we're able to get like tax-free subsidy, which can actually help you as well live in Dublin, for example, and set up and work there. But it's built directly on developing your interpersonal skills, or directly around on how to manage and grow the company, but not just the company, if that makes sense. And of course, there's some really good accelerators there in Dublin, which have pretty good funding too going forward. In terms of the landscape itself, pretty much, I'd say majority of the Irish have university education. I think the stats are like in the early 50%, and most of them would have up a master's level degree. But in Ireland, for example, that's not so much of a big deal. I think because the norm is that everybody is university educated, people tend to like value it a little bit less, and it's not as much of a big deal as maybe it is in other countries. And in Portugal, I know specifically for people who have a degree or as such, it probably means a little bit more because of that. There's pretty good universities here. They're not as good as like the likes of Stanford or some in London and things like that, but Trinity College and such and UCD are generally pretty good in regards of top. But in terms of like talent, you've got a lot of really good international talent. So specifically for like India, Western or Eastern Europe, the Nordics, a lot of them really come to Dublin to like get top tier tech jobs. So kind of like I mentioned a little bit of this earlier on, but in relation to the work culture, it is very much based on results. And Lewis said this as well. It's all about really what kind of value can you bring to the organization. Everything is usually very informal. There's not as many meetings, there's not as many emails back and forth. Decisions are usually made relatively quickly. So it's really just about what kind of value you can bring to the table. And, employees typically gain a lot of autonomy. So they have a lot more, I guess, autonomy to actually kind of really do their job, and really they're not macromanaged as easily as they will be in other countries. In terms of networking is really, really crucial. It's really all about like, how can you, show that you have some value? How can you kind of prove it? And then really, if people believe in you, usually Irish networking really is something that will allow you to bring out to everybody else, and kind of they'll actually be advocates and champions and help sell your product for you. So then if you kind of look, I guess, on the environment, because it's so informal, it's a really good way to go out and actually kind of meet other companies. I've been out at like bars or restaurants, and I'm meeting the people who work in big tech companies, which would be very relevant to our target market for previous companies I had. And I'd easily kind of, generate contacts and, actually get, real sales from that. Versus sometimes in some other countries, it can be quite difficult to gain something tangible about that. And so you usually have a good opportunity as well to kind of to really facilitate, cross revenue and sales. And in terms of our kind of communication, although the Portuguese can be quite direct and, still quite polite as well, the Irish can be quite polite and direct, but still like try to like take out the fluff. So, we don't have as much of that kind of, back and forth and, how are you? And, to a very kind of a bit more of an elongated degree. It's a little bit less informal, just kind of more straight to the point. And because time is really, really important. And I think all this comes from really being Ireland and the influence America has in Ireland. So a lot of Irish moved to the US in the, the 60s and such, and developed really strong ties. A lot of their kind of work culture kind of came back to Ireland, and, through foreign direct investment was pumped back into the country. And with that, then we developed a kind of quite a similar working culture. And it's very similar as well to the UK. So living in Ireland, for example, it's, very, very safe. Our police don't have guns. They just have batons. So, for the most part, there's not a lot of, armed crime. Of course, like as Louis said, like any city, there's, or any country, there's some bad areas and things like that. But for the most part, it's, relatively safe and ranked second in the world. A lot of people don't know, but Irish healthcare is effectively free for the most part. GPs and your general doctor and such, you typically have to pay if you, earn over 30,000 a year or something like that. I don't know exactly. But, that can be quite a bit expensive just to go and see a GP. But then after that, everything is effectively free. Education pretty much is the same. We don't really have any costs, bars and maybe some slight subsidies or, small fees that will go into your education. But typically your first degree is free. And our employment rate as well is, pretty good. It's in the top 10 in the EU at the moment. And in terms of kind of progress, the social index, we're 10th for gender equality. So kind of we have a really kind of positive outlook on this, and making sure that males and females have very similar pay. And once again, this kind of stems back to actually the value from that everybody actually gives to an organization, not really about their background, or their connections and such. So quality of life as well is pretty good. Although it's quite expensive, things are easy to do. Because they're easy to do, you don't get as stressed, you have a bit more satisfaction, and you have a bit more free time as well. Because even being in the office, although you're working a lot, things are done a bit more efficiently. So that kind of pans out for the rest of your life. So that was just a really short and formal presentation from me. Thank you very much, Lewis, for giving me the opportunity to do it, and hope that was some value there. Open for any questions that you guys would like to ask.
Thank you so much, Paul and Luis, for your presentations. There are no comments yet here in the chat, but I have some questions that I would like to address you. So maybe I can start with Paul. So in your experience doing business both in Ireland and in Portugal, what do you say that is the more challenging process when a Portuguese startup wants to, for the first time, explore the Irish startups ecosystem and the markets?
It's probably, I would say, probably the most difficult is it's cultural, really. It's just kind of adapting to how things are done a little bit different. It's in some ways, sometimes it's a little bit less personable, where like the Portuguese really do like to meet each other and know each other. With some companies we've sold to in Portugal, like I'd have to go and kind of meet their CEO and go out to the office and have lunch with them, and which is lovely. It's a really nice thing, but in Ireland that just would kind of be skipped. But then at the same time, you might go to a networking event at a bar where you'd kind of be expected, to have a few drinks with the person. So it's just done a little bit different. In terms of direct challenges, it's definitely cultural, and I guess it's, you are very much, once you kind of explore the Irish market, you're dealing really with how do you sell to the US, how do you sell to the UK. The cultures are kind of so similar in the work element throughout the life. But what I think a really good benefit is, I would see Ireland as a stepping stone to the UK and as a stepping stone to the US. So indirectly kind of moved on from your question, but yeah, I'd say cultural.
Thank you. And now we have a question here in the chat. So at the moment, what are the top vertical or sectors for foreign startups in Ireland?
I would say kind of similar to what Louise said as well, medical, biotech, a lot of pharma, but now really I'd say the biggest area is kind of AI, but it could be even AI layers on top of all these areas like medical and pharma and such. AI is absolutely booming in Dublin. A lot of US VCs are kind of setting up, new offices in Dublin. Like I'm currently engaging with that myself. There's a lot of opportunity for that. There's a huge scope for selling to large enterprise companies, all the Accentures, the Googles, the Facebooks, IBMs, which have their hands in so many different areas of like different type of product scopes. So it's really, if you're into AI and stuff, it's a great place to be. But I would say software as a whole, so technology really as a whole.
If I may also say something about that. So when the Portuguese startups look at Ireland, they need also to look not only to Dublin, because you can find for instance, in Galway, a very strong medical device hub, also in Cork. So there are some areas in Ireland, some cities, some hubs that they concentrate. They are very, I don't know how many, Paul, you can detail, but even if you see the universities and the accelerators that they have there, for instance, in Galway, I'll be there next week. So that's like half of the companies there, the startups are related to medical devices, the business that came out of the university. Similar entities like Instituto Pedro Nuno. So when you look at Ireland, look also to Galway, to Cork, to other locations that might fit well the approach to this market. Okay,
I would 100% agree with that. Galway, for example, is such a thriving city. The university there is pumping out a lot of graduates, and specifically these companies are setting up outside because obviously the land is cheaper physically to have their centres. There's a lot of graduates there. If you're moving to Ireland, I probably wouldn't move to Dublin. Although I instinctivly say Dublin because I'm from there, and it's just I'm used to associating Dublin with Ireland. But Galway is an amazing city just in terms of business itself, and still a lot of connections, for really big organizations. So it's a kind of good way to sell to the Irish market, but as well, I would see, as I said, growing that to the US and UK.
Okay. And Luis, from your experience in supporting Portuguese startups in the market, we might have here some startups that don't know ICEP as much. So, what would be your advice to them on how to approach you and your colleagues and the market so that they are more delighted to explore these new opportunities?
As usual, if I don't know if they have a key account manager in our agency, they can contact for this market, not for other markets, through this front office that we have in Portugal. Nevertheless, if you contact me directly and you have my contacts, and you will share with all the attendants, what we can support is first. We need to understand the business model that you have, what the product or service you have to deliver, and then try to establish the best approach to this market. And it could be to put you in touch directly with some potential partners or clients. It could be put you in the ecosystems. For instance, in Dublin, we have different hubs like Dogpatch Lab, like Guinness Enterprise Center, and many others. Or in Galway, the two universities over there, they have also hubs. Depending on the business, you need to start. I don't have a business model defined for everything, so we need to understand what are the deliveries, and then try to help to put in touch, because the stage of development of each startup also change. So some on the approach to market, they are also looking for VCs, not only to sell but also for investment and other things. So every approach when they contact me is different. So from that point, understanding what are their needs, what are their potentials, and introduce them to people like Paul or other people in the market. They also will be able to help even more than me, probably, with because they are specialists in some sectors, in some areas, and it's from there that we start the approach to the market.
Okay, that's a good advice, actually, to be sure that you understand all of the needs of the startups and build a plan based on that. And how about the culture regarding fairs and matchmaking events? Do you think that Ireland is a good spot that holds this kind of international event?
The biggest one moved to Lisbon some years ago, actually. But anyway, they still have here some interesting ones. For instance, next week, in terms of not specific for startups, but at least to visit and to be there, medical device technology will be in Galway on the 25th, 26th of actually, I will be there with some Portuguese companies. And this kind of events. But for instance, in Dublin, you have the Dublin Tech Summit, or even the Dublin Startup Week, or there are different events where you can attend, where you can exhibit, when you can showcase your product or service. So that, like I was telling, so I need to understand what is the delivery, what is the development of the startup at that moment, if it fits this kind of event or another one. So this is it changed, but definitely the best thing to do is to understand the market, to visit one of these events or two or wherever, in order to move forward to invest in the market. So for depending on the company, as I was telling, so I will identify different events where they can attend and start their networking. One thing that can resume the culture, the business culture of the Irish, is that they are not like Portuguese, as we both talk about, but they don't have maybes. Okay, so they have yes or no. So
no
this
way.
okay, so maybe something like is a thing that we have in Portugal. Is it's possible? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but in Ireland, it's yes or it's no. And if it's no, they will not talk to you anymore, and they move forward to another. And this is something that sometimes, as a Portuguese, it hurts a little because, but at least you know that it's not going to happen nothing over there because they already told you that is no. I don't know if Paul can confirm this, but it's very Irish. It's very for us Portuguese and more Latin people. That it's like have an answer like a no, exactly like that. It's harder in the beginning, but then you understand that it's better for both of us. We don't waste time and we go directly to the business or to another potential client or wherever.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. 100%. It's exactly like that.
Thank you. So
60-year almost.
So maybe to sum up, Paul, I would like to ask you your final top 3 tips or advice for startups, just to finish on a good mood.
Startups, just I guess in general, it's really about, I guess, having just so much clarity really on what you're building, who you're building it for, and your addressable market. There are 3 very, very simple things. Well, they sound simple, but they're not. Like they're highly complex, and there's so many companies get this wrong. They waste huge amounts of time more so than money, because that's the one thing you don't get back. And they go in the wrong direction. So, even for me, mistakes I made in the past doing that they've cost a lot. So just having clarity and focus, I think, is everything,
Okay, so thank you very much. We are going to share your presentation, of course, for all attendees and the other ones that will be listening to us later on. I will be sharing your contact details and we will be in touch. Thank you so much, everyone, for your availability.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.